I was wrapping up the last podcast, had uploaded it to 2 platforms, exporting the video, and then suddenly the bombshell hits. Jim Harbaugh and the suspension will stand. Michigan has withdrawn its legal battle against the Big Ten. Let's talk about it here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Thursday again. We are, for those who've clamored for 2, we have gotten 2. So that's where we're at. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Holt, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. Would have gotten to this sooner, but Sarah was already on her way over for our planned Thursday night festivities. And so we are now going into all of this. So if you live under a bridge with no ability to reach the outside world, then you have also learned at this point that Michigan has recanted its litigation. It is no longer challenging the Big Ten. It has come to a settlement with the Big Ten. The Big Ten will no longer pursue any penalties for Michigan, but Jim Harbaugh will fill out the 3 games that he was originally planned to, according to the Big Ten. In that he served 1, he has 2 more. That means Jim Harbaugh will not be on the sidelines for either Maryland, the presumed 1,000th win, or Ohio State. So everything better be buttoned down for that last game. Certainly the plans that Ohio State had hoped to achieve have come to fruition here. Again, I stand firm on that. But what happened? Your guess is as good as mine. I know that's not very comforting in this moment. My sources have gone dark. I've spoken to a lot of colleagues. Their sources have gone dark. They know my sources. I know their sources. These are not people that generally go dark. But that's where we stand right now. I have been as flabbergasted as any of you. Now, I spoke to one of my main sources in terms of the what happened, right? The sources that went dark are the ones that would tell me what will happen, right? Like before, I was telling you what did happen, not what's going to happen. And then I switched gears and started communicating with sources that were telling me what's going to happen. The Empire Strikes Back was a very apt thing until suddenly it's not. And I don't know what to make of it until I kind of get a little bit more info as to what's going on. Right now, there's all of this talk of there's more evidence that was found and yada yada yada. I'm telling you, there's no more evidence. Right, like barring some just significant lies from multiple parties to me, there's no more evidence. Multiple parties, names that you would trust if they told the to you. There's no more evidence of anything else. There's no evidence that I have been made aware of any kind of like, oh, coaches knew, coaches directed. That's the only thing that I would think of, unless there was just something else that could certainly yield more penalties that's unrelated of some sort. Maybe it's related to the investigation, but unrelated otherwise. But as far as the Connor Stalions of it all, I steadfast in that he was the top of the pyramid. So what did Michigan do? I likened this to, I talked to a colleague earlier today in the brief moment that I had about 20 minutes between when I uploaded the podcast and before Sarah arrived. So I made a couple calls, tried to get some feverish info as fast as I can. I was texting people. I made a couple analogies, and I think both are very apt. And this is where things get really disappointing when it comes to Michigan. It's basically Michigan just did what James Franklin did in the game against Penn State. Michigan was going to go for it on 4th down, 4th and 2. They go for it. And then they say, we're going to call a timeout. And then they punt. So they just wasted all of their political capital, everything, all the goodwill and everything that they had of everyone for this isn't your father's Michigan. They're fighting back. And now they're not. Now, the settlement, let's note that it is notable that the Big Ten is going to stand down now. That's very notable. But it's also disappointing because the truth, again, was on Michigan's side. I don't know what it is that they feel like they had, but I have not just talked to one person or two people. I've talked to probably like 10 different people, most of whose names you would know. And this is where we're at. And this was all beforehand, right? Like again, I'm flabbergasted because for some, and I know there are some people out there that think that there's the mountains of evidence of otherwise, right? Obviously, there's the fever dreams by rivals that think that there's a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Again, there isn't, but it doesn't explain. That would explain more of why Michigan chose to lay down at this point. I'm not going to completely lambast them until I kind of have a better picture, but certainly it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense to my sources who know the ins and outs of what did happen, and it doesn't make any sense to some of my colleagues that just seem to they're shaking their heads just as much as I am, or even my sources of the what did happen variety. My other analogy is it's very similar to the it's like the Big Ten is you got to come along with me on this. The Big Ten is Cersei Lannister, and the Big Ten is Cersei Lannister, and Michigan is Ned Stark, and they just got told in the Game of Thrones either you win or you die. Well, if you watched season 1 of Game of Thrones, you know what happens there. And that's unfortunately where I believe Michigan is at this moment. It capitulated. The ultimate old Michigan won out. And I'm just as surprised as anybody because I've heard of a lot of the plans. I've heard of some of the different tactics, the strikebacks, what they had, all of these things. Some of those things will still, I would imagine, come to fruition, but maybe they won't, right? I steadfast again in everything that I've told you, but I am kind of shocked that this is how this went. Now, there is something else. I can't talk about it, but I'm going to allude to some things here, which we're going to get into in just one moment. Before we do, these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available, and that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free, and it's so easy to create a job. It takes a matter of moments. Once you're done, you go to your own profile, add that purple hashtag hiring frame to let everyone know that you are indeed hiring. And then with simple tools like screening questions, it makes it easy to focus on candidates with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you would like to interview and hire. Just like Michigan is attempting to win a national championship under dire circumstances, it went to the transfer portal, pulled in all kinds of people to help them do that. Your business can do the same thing so that you can win your own company's national championship. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Got to continue on. I took a little break there for a second for no reason. Now's the time for your Game Changer of the Week. It's brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Blake Corum, who had multiple big plays, I'll add Donovan Edwards in that. The run game in general was just ferocious against Penn State. 5 yards a carry, multiple big runs, multiple big touchdowns. Athletic Brewing Company has changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. Run game proved that it's maybe not back in the same vein as it was last year, but going up against the #1 run defense in the country, Michigan said, we're going to still run it on you. And they had the best day against Penn State than anyone else. So cheers to Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards. Now, Athletic Brewing Company has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. Their brews are great tasting and award-winning, and they beat out full-strength beers in global competitions. And I think the great part is there's no hangovers ever. That's the best part. And you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or you can buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First-time customers can use the code LOCKEDON to get 15% off of your first online order. That's LOCKED ON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, so continuing on here with this mode of thought, I've been telling you to keep your eyes on certain publications and such, and I was led to believe a couple days ago that time would be imminent, and I've kind of got some of the info recently, and I don't think it's necessarily that imminent. There's a lot more work to be done, and I think that was a little bit more to be expected. Whether that had anything to do with Michigan's timing here, right, of deflecting, right, to some degree, because again, there's no part of Michigan that doesn't believe that Ohio State was responsible for all of the stuff that has happened to it. Okay, so that's what makes it even more surprising that they laid down. But at the same time, we're maybe not talking days. We're maybe talking weeks and or months before the bottom is gotten to, if it can be fully at all, considering again they're going to chase things like the paper trail, and it's very clear at this juncture that it's not going to be quite as easy. I don't know that had anything to do with it necessarily, but I part of what I try to do, and part of this is probably coming from my time at UTA and United Talent Agency, is I had learned there that part of the job of being an agent trainee is to manage expectations, right? So I'm doing that for you right now. Don't expect something to come out the week of the game. I was led to believe for a very long time that was probably not necessarily the week of the game, but sometime before that it was going to. I'm going to say sit tight. It's probably going to be a while. That's at least to my understanding. I could be wrong, but I want to manage your expectations as far as that's concerned. I tried to manage your expectations with all of this other stuff, and then somehow things turn around on me, right? And I'm not saying I was wrong, because I don't believe that I am. I've had so many people, again, names that you would believe on this. I mean, I've told you too, sometimes that doesn't always work out that way. It doesn't always work out that you're right. Just because someone, like a certain Maryland offensive coordinator tells you that someone's going to enroll at the school, there's nothing to worry about. Doesn't always end up working out that way. Okay. That's just kind of the nature of the game. And then you take your lumps, even though you didn't necessarily feel like you deserved them in that case. And, but you understand that that's how the game is played. But I do stand by, again, that there is no scheme above Connor Stalions. Right. So I stand with you in the terms of, really, for the first time since this all started, having no idea what is actually happening. I know that is not comforting, but that is where we stand. And I'm going to be honest with you about that. I'm not going to pretend like I know something and I'm just hiding it. I'm just as confused as all of you. So this was an opportunity for me to come on and tell you that, because instead what I could have done is just gone to Maryland and pretended like everything is status quo and everything, but it's not. Michigan capitulated. Why it did it? I hope to get some answers this weekend. I don't know if I will or won't. And if it's a good answer, we'll come on and we'll tell you what the good answer is. If it's not a good answer, we'll come on and we'll tell you, and we'll explain one way or the other about why things are the way that they are, why things happened the way that they happened. Now, it should not be underestimated again that the Big Ten is going to stop digging on its own investigation. The NCAA will continue on. Okay. They are being very aggressive right now, very un-NCAA-like, which is still really bizarre, kind of given everything, the way the NCAA has tended to move. You've had FBI involved, you've had wiretaps, you've had, buying teams, you've had different things that people would otherwise probably look at and say death penalty. Here, it's just kind of bizarre because it is something, again, and I only know of a few teams not inside the Big Ten that have practiced similar methodology as Connor Stalions has. But I don't know. While I don't know of any others in the Big Ten per se that do that have done it the way Connor did it. There's other things that we've obviously discussed, like trading and things of that nature. Okay. Ultimately, what this is bowing down to the hit job. No matter which way you kind of look at it, ultimately. Because what have we been saying since day one? This was a political hit job with the sole purpose of getting Jim Harbaugh to not be on the sidelines. They didn't want him on the sidelines at all for Purdue forward. He got to be on the sidelines for Purdue, and we've not seen him again since. Mission accomplished. Now, if I was Michigan, I would have fought. Because, again, how many times do I say the truth will set you free? And I understand if you aren't believing that in this moment. Because you'd sit there and look at everything and say, well, why would they do this? Well, old Michigan would have done this. And current Michigan maybe just wanted to get rid of the distractions and said, listen, we're not gonna go into the week of Ohio State fighting this uphill battle. Let's control what we can control. Maybe. Again, I'm speculating at the moment. I don't really know. I hope to find out soon. And when I do, I'll tell you. But that's where we stand. Michigan's going to go to Maryland. It is talented enough to be able to withstand anything Maryland has. And it's also talented enough where it really still should beat Ohio State. But how much is Jim Harbaugh worth on the sidelines? Is he worth 7 points? Is he worth 14 points? Is he worth more? We know going from non-conference to conference, it's looked a lot different. Penn State isn't necessarily a great barometer because that was going to be a tougher game anyway. Can Michigan still go beat Ohio State on the road? Or not on the road, at home without Jim Harbaugh? It can. So let's talk about that here in a moment. Before we do that, listen, it might not be as fun of a weekend as you thought it, but you're going to forget about everything. Once Michigan kicks off at noon against Maryland, you're going to forget about all of this. Everyone's going to forget about it for at least a few hours. And another way that you can add to the fun of watching college football is Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you versus the numbers instead of battling a bunch of pros and sharks and people who do this for a living that can just fly up leaderboards and you don't even stand a chance. Here, you're going to pick 2 to 6 player stat projections and go more than or less than. And that's it. It's that simple. You can turn $10 into $250 with a matter of a few taps. And now that basketball season has started, you can pick combo projections across football and basketball with the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players from different sports and leagues. So say you want to go Jordan Poole with so many threes and Nico Collins with a couple different receptions, you can do that, right? You can do exactly that. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy, so if your entries stay in play, even if one of your players get injured. So with football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second, the player is rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. It's a great deal there. So with that in mind, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege with the promo code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. All right, so the next step here for Michigan is it needs to be able to beat Ohio State, right? Obviously, first things first, Maryland and Ohio State. The good news about getting this out of the way is that they can formulate a plan without Jim Harbaugh there. What you don't want is Sharon Moore to feel like he's balancing too much in the biggest game, right? He's already beaten Penn State. That was the biggest game to date of the season. It's going to get bigger. If this was last year's Ohio State team, I probably wouldn't feel great about it. But is Kyle McCord better than CJ Stroud? No. Travion Henderson might, if he's healthy, might be an upgrade on Mayan Williams and Chip Trayanum. That part's true. Defense is playing a heck of a lot better, but defense was playing pretty good last year for Ohio State. So obviously it's taken a step forward. The good news is you've got a player-led team, and that's what is going to drive you forward. With the Big Ten no longer investigating, with it being a settlement deal, they're not going to try to do anything like suspend multiple coaches, or at least I'd imagine, or Jim Harbaugh again for the Big Ten championship game. Not that it would necessarily matter against a Cooper DeJean-less Iowa, or for the playoff, right? So Harbaugh's effectively suspended for half the season, which is kind of wild, again, especially just given everything. And now you're just in a situation where you have to go and play and win your biggest game without him on the sidelines. But what this gives Michigan an opportunity to do now is have enough ample time to plan. How does it handle it? You know nothing else is going to come down the pike. You know that there's no surprises. You know that this is what it is. So now you have to figure out, how are you going to delegate things? How can you keep things mostly the same? And how can you make Sharon Moore feel comfortable in the role of interim head coach? How can you make the players feel comfortable in everything? They shouldn't be the same issues that there were at Penn State, trying to get plays in amidst a hostile crowd, anything like that. Now you're in a situation mostly where you're just trying to, it's going to be a lot quieter crowd. Obviously, it's Michigan Stadium. They'll be on offense. You can kind of handle a lot of that stuff. But I think now at least they can go forward and say, it is what it is. This is not what we want. And plan accordingly. If Michigan loses, I think that's pretty catastrophic to everything. Right? Because I was not convinced at any point that Michigan would lose against Ohio State. Now I feel like it's a lot more certain that that's a possibility. Certain that it's a possibility doesn't mean that I think that's what's going to happen. But I think it's 2 years in a row now where it feels like, man, the biggest factor, the X factor, is removed from that game. Blake Corum a year ago, Jim Harbaugh here. Now, player-wise, assuming that Michigan stays healthy, obviously you still have J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, Roman Wilson. You've got all these players on offense. Defensively, I feel like there's still a really good shot that you can really shut down Ohio State's defense. They put up 20 points total against Penn State. I think you can hold them less than what they held Penn State to. And if not, I still think Michigan can score more than 20 points even against this defense that Ohio State's put out there. But now you're taking a great football mind off the field, someone who's seen more of the game than any of the coaches that are there. And I'm not really sure how you make up for that. We'll find out. But the good news is, here's the good news. If Michigan wins that game with Sharon Moore leading the charge, you no longer have Jim Harbaugh. You no longer have Connor Stalions. There are any excuses that the other team has are just going to be that, right? You will have effectively taken their soul. If you're Ryan Day and you lose to Sharon Moore, there better be a box on your desk. Or you better know that there's going to be a box on your desk that you're going to have to clear out, which is wild. And then maybe it'll expedite some of the other stuff that we were hoping to hear about. All right, that's going to do it for episode number 2 of the day. This was not intended, but this is where we're at. Had enough time. Whether or not we talk to you from Maryland remains to be seen. Hopefully we'll find a way to make that happen. Maybe we'll do a guest with one of the On 3 people. See if any of them are amenable to it. But we'll talk then. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.